Welcome to Global Grit Conversations, where resilience, leadership, and impact meet across borders. I'm Pamela Campagna, Global Advisor, Professor, and founder of Blue Sage Consulting. Each episode features candid conversations with leaders, builders, and thinkers from around the world who share the moments that tested their resilience and the insights that shaped who they became. This is Global Grit Conversations. So Pamela Grist, welcome to the podcast, where we talk to people about their personal and professional experiences, some of the decisions that have led them to where they are today, and reflecting back on what you've learned from your challenges and maybe some of your mistakes. So welcome.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
So let's just start with your background. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, where you were born?
I was born in Vancouver, Canada. I raised there to European parents, actually, immigrants to Canada. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I thought I grew up in a traditional Canadian household, but not really. And both of my parents had worked for the airlines. And so there was sort of a connection with travel already. And my father had a business later importing from Japan electronics. And so from childhood, I had kind of a dream of travel and really looked forward to it. Felt that I was born in the wrong country. Felt I belonged somewhere else, didn't really know where else. So I did part of my university studies in Mexico. And then a couple of days after I graduated from university, I moved to Japan and was there for 3 years. And then came back to Canada and did a second degree with the express purpose of moving to Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates. I moved there in 98, and I've more or less been there ever since.
Wow, that's quite a journey and a circuitous route, right? From place to place.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me, from Mexico, you went to Japan.
Yeah.
So that transition, that inflection point, was there anything you noticed in terms of similarities between the two experiences?
No, I would say they're pretty different, actually, culturally very different. And the way that I ended up in Japan was actually, I had a love for Latin America. I'd studied Latin American literature in university. And my father was not a fan of Latino men. So he actually got me the job in Japan and said, just go and see what it's like for a while, because he had a connection with Japan.
So he diverted you from Mexico.
He absolutely diverted me. But I thought, okay, I got nothing to lose, so let me give it a shot. And I think it was that attitude that I've kind of followed through in life, which is, if an opportunity presents, I've looked at it and judged it and then made a decision and kept an open mind about things and then follow through on it. So, yeah. So big differences between the two. But I have a very strong affinity still to both countries, actually.
Okay. And then from Japan, you said the UAE, you went to Dubai. Again, very different culturally. How was that transition?
So that was an interesting one. I had been living in Japan, and I had a very good friend who was in Dubai, and I hit a rough point in Japan. And she said, why don't you come and visit me in Dubai? And I went, and I completely fell in love with the place. It was in the mid-90s, so there was nothing there, but there was this incredible desert and beautiful sea. And it just felt open and free, and the people were very kind, very warm. And I hadn't really experienced anything like that before. So it was very compelling to me. So then I was like, yeah, I think this is the next place I want to live. And, then went through the effort, was told you pretty much need to have a master's degree to get a good job there. So I went and did that and then made my way there. And of course, every place is different on holiday versus actually living in the place. So I had a little bit of some culture shock when I moved there. But at the same time, I loved it. And all the things that I went for originally were still there. So in my tough times in work, I would go to the desert or I would go to the beach and replenish and always remember why I was pulled there in the first place.
It
Yeah.
seems like you're drawn to certain
Yes.
places.
Yes.
And
very
you
much
follow
so.
where you're drawn to.
Yeah. That's absolutely a theme for sure.
And what do you attribute that willingness to be drawn to a place?
I don't know really, but I think from childhood, I've always had a deep sense of curiosity and open-mindedness. And so those kind of go hand in hand with just like being open to trying a new experience or going to a new place and feeling what it feels like. And then I'll sense a place and I'll be like, yeah, this is a good place. I like this. Or no, this place doesn't work for me. It's time for me to move on. And yeah, but I don't know. It's just something in me that I have always had. And
have you ever
never
wondered
named.
or studied what the difference between living somewhere and being a tourist in a place?
Very much so. In fact, so I kind of went to Dubai. I had fallen into HR management as a career, and that's what I went to Dubai to do. And I did that for some years, but then I ended up falling into photography and publishing, which was a career that I absolutely loved. But being behind the camera gives an opportunity to witness and being able to travel as well. And so I started, watching people, watching how people interact with place, and just noticing the differences between somebody who lands into a place and doesn't become part of the place, even temporarily, permanently, or somebody who actually goes with an openness, with a willingness to experience, to interact. You have to let your guard down, of course, to do that, right? And not everybody wants to do that. But I did notice, because I worked in recruitment for a university in the beginning. So I hired faculty from all over the world. And I witnessed that in terms of a lot of people made this huge move in their lives to come from whichever country they were coming from, the US, Australia, UK. And then they got to the place that they had uprooted themselves and their families, given up their tenure track jobs, so big risk. And then they landed in the place and they put these blinders on and they lived with expectations that they had from home as opposed to enjoying the new place that they were in. And I found that really fascinating. To kind of work with that, witness it at first, and then I had to work with it because I started in recruitment and then I was tasked with retention. And because a lot of the people that we were hiring started leaving because they had these blinders on.
How was it different in terms of the role that you played then? What did you have to do differently?
Well, the first job was a lot easier because you're selling people a dream and an opportunity. And the second one, you're trying to convince somebody to stick with something that they may not. Maybe they have buyer's remorse or they're not happy with. And I'm not a salesperson, so I'm not so good. I can sell something that's easy. I am not so good at selling something that's hard. So what I ended up doing was, I'm a visual person. So I ended up making presentations to the faculty and showing them the beautiful parts of the country that we were living in and saying to them, how about you on the weekends go and explore where you are and don't just worry about the job that you think is not perfect. It is what it is. We've all signed contracts. Make the most of that, but also go out and make the most of your life and live a full life in the hours that you're not working. And that helped. That for me, that was a great way to do it because I'm naturally okay with images.
Right.
And interestingly, what happened there was I'd gone to the media department at the university and said, help me out to make a presentation. And a couple of the faculty members said to me, You've got a lot of great content here. You should make a book. And I was like, well, I don't know how to make a book. And they said, well, we can teach you the software if you want. And I said, yeah, great. I would love to. I love learning as well. So I said, yeah, sure. And they taught me the software. And then by chance or not, I met a publisher and pitched the idea for the book. And he said, yeah, it sounds like a great idea. He trusted me. And I ended up publishing that book. And
So you went from HR, recruitment, HR retention, into a totally different,
completely
career path, or at least was it you would consider it changing your career. You followed something you were interested in. You learned new skills, and then you published a book. And from there, where did that take you?
So when I published the book, I had a very clear idea of what I wanted to do. I wanted to create a large format photography book, and what was available on the market didn't appeal to me personally. I've always felt that photography should be honored. So I don't like text on top of images. And I also felt that photographers should be credited and honored for their work. So I created this book that was very clean in design, had big, beautiful photos, and every photographer had a bio at the back of the book. And they could use the book as their portfolio as well, which was, just kind of a nice giving back, more of a community feel. Right after the book was published, it won a couple of awards, and totally unexpected because I had no experience whatsoever. But I guess I had seen that there was a niche in the market and there was something missing, a gap. And and in this part of the world, I don't know other parts of the world, but certainly my experience in the UAE is if you've won an award or your product has won an award, then people feel that you're a trusted entity. They want to start working with you. So suddenly there were knocks at the door, and we'd like you, this government wanted me to create a book for them, and that government, and so suddenly I just fell into a new career. I thought I was just going to create one book and that was it.
Well, did you really fall into it, or did you make it happen?
I worked really, really hard. Yeah. It's just, it went beyond expectation, maybe.
So it's interesting that you characterize it as falling into it, as opposed to capitalizing on an opportunity put in front of you. And is there a difference? Do you see that difference there?
If I'm always behind the camera, not in front of the camera. So maybe it's more that, maybe a bit more like modesty or something. But it was a lot of hard work, and there was a great reward for all the hard work beyond expectation.
And at the end of it, well, not at the end of it, but at the end of that chapter, it sounds as though you established a name for yourself. You had started to market yourself, maybe. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
And then where did it go from there?
So that lasted 16 years, and I ended up partnering with that publisher, and we grew the business. When I first started with him, there were a couple of employees. I think we were like less than 5. We grew it to 80 employees. We had over 200 products.
Wow.
We covered markets all over the world. And so it was exciting and fun. And it was a really happy career because you're producing beautiful products. It was a lot easier than HR. HR, you're dealing with unhappy people.
Yes.
People and their problems. And I continued with the HR actually, but that kind of became secondary because I just preferred the creative side of things more. And eventually it was time for me to leave. And I somehow, through the work that I had been doing, people had come to trust me. And so I would do a book project for a government department, but then they would realize that I had HR skills. So then they would commissioned me to do an HR project with them on the side. And so I was kind of consulting on the side as well. And so eventually when I left publishing, I consulted for years and ended up working with a lot of entrepreneurs and somehow more in the health and wellness fields, which also interests me a lot. A lot of female entrepreneurs, and really enjoyed that. And I'm still kind of doing that a bit here and there. But I also made a decision a couple of years ago to take some time and travel the world. And that's what I've been doing for the last, just over 2 years. So I packed up everything, put everything into storage, and I've been traveling with my camera.
You and your camera.
Me and my camera. I'm back with the camera.
You're back with the camera again.
Yeah,
so that sounds interesting. I bet you the camera's happy.
The camera is happy, and I get to be behind it.
Okay, and you're happy.
And
yes.
I'm exploring the world, and I'm witnessing, people, human behavior, and I'm absolutely loving it. Yeah.
So you're a social scientist of sorts.
In some ways, I suppose, and I find it really fascinating, and it brings together the photography and the curiosity and the travel. It brings everything together. I've been working on a couple of projects, and I don't know where they're going to go, but I'm having fun with it at the moment.
And where have your travels taken you?
I do go back to a few favorites. So I tend to go back to Japan a couple times a year. Still really holds a place in my heart. But I also go a little bit where the wind blows me or where opportunities arise. So that whole thing that I started when I was younger of being open to places and opportunities and listening and paying attention. So what I do is if a place comes up a few times, then I'll notice that. And then I'll look into it and say, maybe that's somewhere I should go.
What do you mean comes up? What does that mean?
Maybe it'll come up in conversation, or I'll be listening to a podcast or reading a book. And so Mongolia was a place. I just came back from there recently. And I had seen a film on an eagle huntress quite some years ago. And that sparked something in me. Wow, I'd really love to go to Mongolia. And then last year, I was traveling in Saudi Arabia with a few friends. And one of them said, oh, my dream is to go to Mongolia. And I've had that dream since I was a child. And I said, wow, I've also had that dream, not as long as you, but for quite some years. And then shortly after that, a couple of other people mentioned Mongolia. And I was like, okay, I think maybe it might be time. And so, I made plans with some friends and just got back from 3 weeks there. And it was absolutely phenomenal.
What was so impressive about it for you?
A couple of things. The land is very special there. It's very grounding. The conditions are fairly harsh. It's high steppe. So everybody lives at elevation. Wintertime can reach minus 40 degrees. And the people are very hardy. But they're incredibly kind at the same time. The culture is rooted in Tibetan Buddhism, and the people live in harmony with nature, with the land. People live seasonally, actually, because the conditions are what they are. So that was really fascinating to see people with not as much as in other places in the world, and yet they're truly happy, and they live a very different rhythm. So it's very eye-opening, actually. There was a lot to appreciate there. Yeah.
What words of wisdom would you share with people who are interested in maybe pursuing that draw to a place?
My main one would be, don't go anywhere because you saw it on social media. I see that a lot. And then people will go with a very narrow view of a place. Go because you feel a draw to it, and do some research before you go, and learn a little bit about the place so that you can actually interact better with it. And then when you're there, slow down. Don't always have a camera or a phone. I see that a lot, where people will have traveled somewhere far and then they're completely wrapped up in their device, as opposed to just stopping and looking around and taking in this new place that they've gone halfway across the world to see. So slow down and interact with the locals. There's Google Translate if you can't speak the language. And sign language works really well. And smiles go so far with people. Yeah.
So you must have some sort of a routine that you go through before you go to a place, and maybe then when you're in the place, what are some of your routines?
I'm a huge fan of research. I think it comes from, a background of quite some years studying and then working in education as well. I love my research. And then in publishing, there was a research arm as well. So being a fan of research, I do that a lot before I go to a place. Not so much that it taints my view, but I know what I'm looking for. And so I use Google Maps a lot, and I will pin places that I'm interested in. I'm very much drawn to architecture, design, obviously photography, culture as well. And so I'll look for those places before I go. And then usually what I do is I arrive into a place and I start walking. And I walk and walk and walk. And I prefer to walk than use transport. But if I do use transport, I try to interact with people. So I will have chats with taxi drivers or Uber drivers. In train stations, I will talk to people. And it's incredible who you come across and the nuggets of information or knowledge that you get and the experiences that you can have if you're open to speaking to other people and meeting other people.
Right.
And yeah, just again, same thing, just smiling at people. I just had an interesting experience in Salalah. Right after I came back from Mongolia, it was a bit of a hard landing to come back to the big city of Dubai. So I thought, I'm not quite ready. And I hopped on a plane to the very south of Oman, right next to the Yemeni border. Quite wild nature. It's right at the end of their monsoon season, so it's very green, seaside. And I landed there and went up into a wadi, they call it, like a valley. And some camels started crossing the road. Actually, they walked down the middle of the road. So I stopped my car and I hopped out with my camera. And then this family drove past and they slowed down to see what I was doing. And I kind of smiled and waved at them and they waved at me. And then the camels went into this area that was kind of like a jungle. So I jumped in there to take photos.
Went into the jungle?
Kind of jungly, sort of, rainforesty, jungly kind of, vines growing up all the trees and quite wild. I tried not to think about there might be snakes in the area. I was just like, this is going to be a great photo. And the family ended up being in that area as well. And the mom was like, are you a photographer? And I said, yeah, I take photos. And she said, will you take a photo of my daughter? And I said, I would love to. And that ended up with an impromptu photo shoot and then laughing, airdropping the photos and videos. And then the family invited me to have Arabic coffee and tea and local dates. They were an Omani family, 4 children, husband and wife, and they just made a picnic in the middle of this jungle area. And we sat down for an hour. And I continued taking photos of the kids while we were talking. And I just thought, like, an experience like this is worth $1 million. Like, it's so heart and soul fulfilling. But you have to be open to it. You have to be able to say, hey, yes, this looks like a chance to speak to some people and share something back and forth. And yeah, so I'm always open to stuff.
I want to talk a little bit about cross-cultural interactions. You've brought up some really great points about being open and engaging and being curious and maybe being vulnerable when you don't understand a culture or a language.
Yeah.
So you have to have some level of confidence in order to do that, I would think.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. I think I describe myself as an extroverted introvert. But I think what happens is my curiosity prevails over anything else. And I love the human connections. And so even though I might be shy sometimes, I would also like to interact with somebody. And I've had enough experiences over the years to know that you've got nothing to lose. The worst that's going to happen is somebody can be rude to you and then you just move on. And the best is that you're going to make new friends and have, a lifetime of a great friendship or a partnership, a business partnership or collaboration. And I kind of this belief that everybody who crosses your path in your life is there for a reason. And so I often think about that as well. And I had an interesting experience. I was on some islands in the very, very south of Japan called Okinawa, and had gone to a restaurant that I had looked up, and it's owned by a fisherman. He fishes during the day, and then they cook what he catches in the evening. So it's different every day. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. And it's on a cliff and it overlooks the sea. And I arrived and started chatting with the staff, and I told them that I'm pescatarian, and they forgot. And so they served me some fried rice with pork. And as soon as it arrived in front of me, I could smell the meat. And so I said to them, look, I'm really sorry, but I can't eat this, but I don't want it to go to waste. I haven't touched it. So I'm happy to pay for it, but maybe somebody else would like it. And from behind me, some voices popped up and said, we'll have it. And I turned and I said, I would be so happy if you would have it. And that sparked a 2-hour conversation with a husband and wife and their daughter's friend. And they were of a similar mindset, world travelers, very open-minded. And we just absolutely hit it off to the point that I've gone to visit them twice on mainland Japan. And, we've traveled together and we're in contact all the time. And then they introduced me to their son-in-law and his father, who own quite a known printing press in Japan. And they print beautiful, with special paper labels for some of the top shelf whiskeys and things like that. And I said, I would love to see the printing press.
Of course
I had
you would.
16 years of working in this and kind of a nerd about paper and ink and all of these things. It was always a passion for me. And I walked in there and I know that ink and I've worked with that paper. And they're looking at me like, who are you? Come. And we just had the best day together and just connected over a similar industry. And they had no idea. The couple I had met in Japan, in Okinawa, didn't know that I worked in publishing.
Interesting.
Or printing. And so that's when things like that happen, I think, yeah, there was a reason for us to cross paths. And so being open to those things, I think, allows for a richer life and richer experiences. So I'm a bit addicted to that, actually.
Well, so it sounds like you said a key phrase, which is world traveler or global expatriate or whatever you'd like to call it. So if someone is not that or doesn't consider themselves as a world traveler, but is curious about what that might mean or exploring a bit more, what are some suggestions you might have?
my son and I moved back to Canada for a couple of years around 2019, actually just before COVID. So we ended up kind of getting locked into Canada for quite a
Locked
long
into Canada.
stretch. Yes. And we moved into an apartment building in central Vancouver. And we got to be known in the building pretty quickly. First of all, because we were from Dubai. So that was unusual for everybody. So people were sort of fascinated with us. But the other thing was because every day we went out and explored. And very quickly, our neighbors would say, do you know any good restaurants or any recommendations? And yeah, any opportunity we had, we were just out exploring, road
getting
trips,
out in the
camping,
world.
and small sometimes, just like going and trying the new local restaurant that opened, but then arriving at the restaurant and actually asking a couple of questions. And people love to have questions asked of them generally. People are happy to talk about themselves usually. So, wow, this restaurant is new. How long has it been open? And what were the challenges of opening it or something? And having a genuine curiosity. And yeah, just start local and then have these little almost wins maybe. And then and carrying on, but having the tools, I think, as well. So having, like I said before, two things that I use a lot, Google Maps and Google Translate. So now with a smartphone, you have a lot of support in your hand, which is great. You need to get somewhere, maybe there's Uber or a local rideshare. You can book everything online in advance. You can see reviews. So there's more safety around getting out of your comfort zone, I feel now. But yeah, little steps. Maybe
And having more of a growth mindset about experiencing, being willing to try something new. And you mentioned tools, tools, physical tools, some that you just mentioned, but there are also personal skills, right? There are also skills that you can develop. You mentioned curiosity and questioning, the ability to ask probing questions that might lead to conversation. What are some of the other skills that you think, not only for travel, but in today's business world in particular, what are some of the skills you think that are really necessary?
So I would say, so while I'm traveling, I still work with entrepreneurs on startup projects, and I get to witness different people, and a lot of them are younger people, and I see the ones who do better, and those I would say are the ones who ask questions. They ask for help as well. They don't try to do everything themselves. Maybe they will look for a community, or they'll try to build a community. And sometimes it's not easy to ask for help, but it makes a big difference. I love it when somebody in their 20s will say, hey, you're a bit older, you have more experience. What do you think of this or that? And then, can I pick your brain for half an hour? Can I take you for coffee and learn something from you? And I just think that's such a great way to go about things, just asking questions or assistance of others. And when I look back on my, especially the pivotal moments in my life or careers, it was getting help from somebody else, some advice, leaning on someone else in a moment where I wasn't sure that I was ready for it. And somebody else said, well, have you thought of this? Or, you've got this skill. What about doing something with this skill?
Being receptive to that.
Totally. Yeah.
Because sometimes, sometimes people say it to us, but we don't always hear it until we're ready to hear it.
Yeah.
And then we can do something with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, be it travel or business, just having this open-mindedness, this attitude towards, there are possibilities out there. And I mean, that's one of the things that I've always appreciated about Dubai is there are opportunities. You have to work very hard, but there have been a lot of opportunities over the years, and you can make something of yourself if you work hard. And there was a slogan, I don't know if it's still in use, but it was that the impossible is possible. And that positive mindset is everything, really. If you start with that, as opposed to, oh, it's too much, or it's too expensive, or too difficult,
Yeah.
or too
Right.
whatever it is, but too something negative, then you're not going to get very far. So maybe it's also, speaking to or being surrounded by other positive people. Yeah, maybe a bit of
Be
that.
very supportive as well.
Yeah. But having that support, it's very difficult to do things on one's own. And yeah, I heard something about solopreneurs versus entrepreneurs,
Right.
and I think the success rate is, if I remember right, is higher when there's like more collaboration and than just somebody really going it alone.
So looking back, hindsight is always 2020. Is there anything that you would do differently in your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, when I started out, I did a lot of so-called gentlemen's agreements, and I believed that a handshake and one's word were worth everything. And what I learned was, for me, that worked, but not necessarily for the other person. And so I had quite a few experiences of agreements not being held up on the other side. Maybe payments not being made, or money loaned not being returned, or just people walking away from agreements that we had kind of very firmly agreed upon, I suppose. I mean, I still wish I could trust everybody, and I would like to tell everybody to trust everyone, but I think actually having documentation and contracts and agreements in writing and legal documents are really important. Yeah, even if you're working with friends or people that you feel would never cheat you or lie, I still would, I would have legal documents for everything.
Spoken like the voice of experience.
Yeah,
huh?
Very much so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, those are good lessons. So thank you very much for being part of the podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time and being courageous and being a guest. We hope today's conversation offered insights that you can use in your own journey. Subscribe for future episodes with global leaders, entrepreneurs, practitioners, emerging voices, and unexpected guests. Until next time, keep leading with purpose and turning grit into growth.